Welcome to the Women's Laboratory, giving women around the world a voice. This past Friday was a day many will never forget, where the Supreme Court of the United States actually overturned the precedented Roe versus Wade. On this past Friday, the court voted 6-3 to uphold Mississippi's ban on abortions past 15 weeks. The court also overturned the 5-4. They overturned ruling 5-4 to overturn Roe versus Wade. In an opinion written by Justice Samuel Alito, he called Roe versus Wade egregiously wrong from the start. According to ABC News, the court took on the issue of abortion by agreeing to hear the case of Dobbs versus the Jackson Women's Health Organization, which challenged Mississippi's ban on abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy. The Jackson Women's Health Organization is the only abortion clinic in Mississippi and is now forced to close. Now, these rulings effectively give the states the freedom to decide on abortion rights. And it is projected that about 50% of the nation's states are expected to ban or heavily restrict abortion. In this edition of the Women's Laboratory, we will talk about how the justices voted and what some said during confirmation. We'll examine that. First of all, we have Dr. Gail Holness, Gail Holness. And Dr. Holness, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and talk about, just talk a little bit about who you are, and we'll get into the dialogue once everybody's been introduced.
That's one of the difficult things is for me to talk about myself. I'll just tell you that I'm a daughter of the soil of South Carolina, born in Columbia, South Carolina, attended Clark College, now Clark Atlanta University, then Howard University School of Law. Upon graduation from law school, I was on the most notorious case in the country at the time, which was the state of Georgia versus Wayne B. Williams, the young man accused of killing the kids and convicted of killing the kids in Atlanta, Georgia, back in the early 80s. I am a graduate of Howard University School of Divinity with a doctorate of ministry as well, and I am an AME pastor in Washington, D.C. in the Second Episcopal District. I'm a mother of a minister, Reverend Alley, that most of you know from this broadcast, and from Bethel AME, and I'm a grandmother of 3 wonderful children and 1 son-in-law, Thomas. So here I am. That's me.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you, Granny. Also, I have Dr. Ashlyn Strozier. Dr. Strozier, thank you so much for being a part of this broadcast, and want to talk a little bit about yourself as well.
Greetings. I am Dr. Ashlyn Strozier. I am professor of religion and women and gender studies and sexuality at Georgia State University. I also am an ordained Baptist minister. I study reproductive health in Black women at the intersection of faith. I defended my dissertation, which was an ethnographic study of Black women's faith and reproductive health decisions, which was entitled "A Woman is the Ethic of Reproductive Freedom," in this last summer, which was August 2021. I am continuing my research around that topic. I'm currently working on a project around Black women and the morbidity rate here in Atlanta, and working on a podcast with the University of Virginia, moving that conversation into the public sphere. So I work at the intersection around reproductive health and Black women in faith on a consistent basis. So this is kind of my thing. So I'm just excited to be in the conversation tonight and bring the things that I study and love and I am interested in, and try to put scholarly work and activism together with my brain and my pen to illuminate ways that we can do this thing better, and give Black women ways in which to live healthier and whole lives in this state.
All right. All right. Awesome. Awesome. And also we have Imani Murdoch. Imani, I am so excited to have you on this broadcast tonight. And why don't you talk a little bit about yourself and what you bring to the conversation?
So thank you for having me. I'm Imani Murdoch. I am a recent graduate of Clark Atlanta University. I graduated in 2021. I got my Bachelor of Arts in History with a minor in Political Science. I currently work for a labor union as a political and legislative advocacy apprentice. And I'm also a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I'm so happy to be here and engage in this dialogue because I think it is extremely needed, especially within our community with everything that's going on in the country. It's very much needed, and so I'm just happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
All right, all right. Well, and thank you for being here. We're going to jump right into this discussion, and as I mentioned earlier, I mean the whole, I guess the energy that this discussion brings centers around the latest ruling by the Supreme Court of the United States reversing the precedent of Roe versus Wade, and first, though, I want to get everybody's perspective on we saw earlier about how the justices how they all voted, which I thought was kind of interesting. We, we had a 5-4 vote. Um, Five voted with the majority. We had four to vote to dissent, with Roberts voting to uphold the Mississippi ruling. Correct me if I'm wrong, but then he voted to overturn Roe. So in the critical one about overturning Roe versus Wade, we had Roberts to actually vote on the dissent side. Now, many of us watched the confirmation hearings, so we know, some of the things they said, especially Coney Barrett. And so, I'd like to get your perspective on this vote and what do you think about it so far? And anybody can start out. Anybody can start
I'll start.
out. Okay.
So first, I'd say I'm not at all surprised by this decision, because it's a majority conservative Supreme Court at the moment, and they are just executing what their base wants. And so I'm not surprised at all. I am disappointed, and we knew that this was coming. There was a leak. I feel like within the time between the leak and when it was actually overturned, there wasn't enough done to try to stop it, especially on a national level. I think we had an opportunity to we had an opportunity to codify Roe, and that didn't work out for us. And so again, it was just very disappointing to see this as the outcome. But I know this is not the end, and we just have a lot more work to do.
I will chime in. Go ahead, Dr. Strozer.
As a woman who's never lived a day without Roe versus Wade, I am still at a loss for words. And transparency, I grew up with a aunt who was a adolescent sexuality scholar, specialist, whatever word language you want to use. I am still finding it hard to put language and thought to feeling around what it means for them to have overturned it. Intellectually, I understand what happened. I can chart what happened. I understand we have a conservative Supreme Court, but never have we ever, I sound like a Dr. Seuss book. Never have we ever have we ever seen the court take away a right that they had given. And secondly, in transparency, as a child of probably the second most polarizing case that the Supreme Court has ever ruled on, which was Bush and Gore's election. And I say as a child of that because that was the first time that my group could vote, and which is what made us lose the zeal for voting because our votes didn't count. And the Supreme Court chose who was the president. Here again, you have millennials who are like, here you go. See, James Baldwin told you. Uncle Jimmy tried to tell us. The yet to be United States. What does it mean to be Black and conscious in America? It's to live in a constant state of rage. Like, so for me to say I'm surprised is to lie to you. But to say, like, you take more seriously my ovaries than Black bodies in the street, than gun violence. I'm a former teacher. Then you care about educating folk. Again, I like to hate to say I was surprised, but I'm Black and I'm conscious and I'm educated and I live in a constant state of rage in America. And so I ain't fooled by who y'all are, but I'm saddened that you are just this unethical. So there I am. I'm sorry. There I am with my feelings.
Well, you have great feelings, and those feelings are to be recognized, and we see you. I live also in Washington, D.C., and my office is about 6 blocks from the Supreme Court. And it has been mayhem. It's like a war going on in Washington with all of the military and the officers, the police officers in D.C. They have sent over to that area. But I think that what happens when Justice Roberts stated that the decision is only about Roe, no, this decision is not only about Roe, but the major piece in this decision from a legal perspective is the decades of judicial precedents that the courts have disregarded and overlooked. In fact, 3 justices have clearly demonstrated that their words are built on beds of quicksand based on their flip-flops on the issue. Justice Thomas made it clear by his inference to other laws in the decision. He wrote that the high court should conceivably insert themselves further into our lives and freedoms by considering and possibly reversing other rights hard won by women, and not just women, by Americans of African descent. This decision has far-reaching impacts beyond abortion rights. Look at this. Laws protecting contraception, same-sex marriages and relationships, and access to contraception may be in peril. And not only that, you're talking about the Voting Rights Act may be at bay. We're talking about other rights that impact America, the Civil Rights Act that impact Americans of African descent. This is major when the highest court in the land disregards judicial precedents. And as you stated, Doctor, this law has been in effect as long as you've been alive. It's been in effect for 50 years, which means it was in effect 15 years of my life. I could have been impacted by a Roe versus Wade at 15 years old had Roe versus Wade not been in effect. A lot of our legislators, congresswomen, are talking about how they had abortions, some based on incest, some based on youthful indiscretion, some based on rape. And then there are women who talk about having had abortions because it was life threatening. The parameters that they have put on these new laws is unconscionable.
And I,
And change is already here. I think change is already here. Is where, what next?
and I think that's probably what's more problematic, that you overturn the law, but you put no parentheses in it. You put no semicolon and say, but you can have an abortion if, or there's no abortions, but if you're raped, but if there's incest, if there is a case where the woman might die. I think that's, we got in a time, it's like we went this, everybody who went to seminary knows the story of the Council of Nicaea, when people went to sleep one night and Jesus woke up, and we woke up and Jesus was perfect. That's what we went to sleep. We went to sleep one night and women's bodies were first class citizens. And Black women, we can't even say that because we're margins of margins. So you didn't go to sleep first class citizens. Don't ever lie to yourself. You went to sleep as a second class citizen, and then you woke up as a fourth class citizen that day. Don't lie to yourself. So, we went to sleep as third class citizens, whatever day that was, June 24th. And on the 25th, we woke up, or the 24th, whatever night, 23rd. And we woke up as fifth class citizens. That's crazy because there's no parameters. Because when they did Gallup polls, people might not have believed in abortions, but they believed in abortions when incest or rape happened. What are you saying ethically and morally about people bringing children into the world who don't want them? And you don't want inside programs.
Just let them put it on the side of the noodles. And all you have to do for their plates is just open up the box.
Well, let me to this extent. I'm as has been said, I'm being a grandmother and everything else, but I believe that this decision in Roe is simply the beginning of an extreme Republican agenda to take away different freedoms from all of us, particularly the Americans of African descent. Racism, we're talking about critical race theory. We need to be talking about critical racism. Forget about the theory. We already are in a place where it is impacting us. And we know that the Republicans are definitely not for Americans of African descent. We know this. And for this law to have been overturned, it was not just a leak. There wasn't no leak. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were trying to get the people ready so that it wouldn't be even more of a massive uprising, insurrection, if you will. But this particular issue, and I'm going to just step out in this regard. If you look at the people that are standing, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia now. I live in Washington, D.C., as I've said. And I rode by the state capitol. And they're just Caucasian women basically out there. If you go in Washington, D.C., they're basically Caucasian individuals there. And so we're saying that as American, as women of African descent, initially we were saying, well, this really isn't our battle. There are other things that they're coming for us for. And there are other things that they're coming for us there for. But now, if you look at the news media reports, they're all saying that Roe versus Wade is going to impact women of color more than anyone else. Well, how? How much more will it impact us than it will impact them? Because everybody, we may not have all come over on that Amazing Grace boat, but we didn't all come over on the Carnival Cruise Line either. But we're in the same boat now. And this is going to impact us. But there are so many other legislative issues and so many other laws that could impact us a whole lot more than Roe versus Wade. Because people are going to find a way to make one. As a matter of fact, Washington, D.C. is in the process of becoming a sanctuary city. A sanctuary city where women will feel comfortable enough to come to our city, which is not a state. We're taxed without representation. and we pay more taxes than most people in the country. But we're attempting to make DC a sanctuary state, and other states will do that. But the majority of the states that are implementing these laws, because while it is a federal law, it is up to the states to implement this law. Some of the states are attempting to promulgate laws that will state that if you go out of that particular state and have an abortion, they find out that you had an abortion, they can still charge you with a federal offense. What kind of, I mean, come on, what kind of mess is this?
But Matt,
I agree.
go ahead, Imani.
Yeah, really quickly, I just think like it is definitely a part of a bigger picture and a bigger plan. I do think this is the start of, I feel like I'm watching America's decline in real time. And as somebody who, my first election that I voted in was in 2018, to elect Stacey Abrams as governor of Georgia, which did not work out because that election was really stolen. It's very disheartening as a young person. And the response from the Democratic Party that kind of bothers me a little bit is, yes, go vote, go vote, go vote. I agree, you vote. But we voted and we had a victory. We have a Democratic majority in the House and the Senate and a Democratic president. And we're still faced with these issues based on our previous president. And so it's very disheartening. As a young person, I definitely see the agenda. But I want people to not get confused. Like, this is not about religion. This is not about pro-life, pro-choice. This is about preserving white life. As Representative Mary Miller from Illinois stated at the Trump rally, it's a historic win for white life, because by 2045, white people will become a minority. And in this country of the United States of America, where the country was founded on the principles of white men for white men to preserve whiteness, that's not something that they're okay with. And so as a result, this is why, they don't want white women to continue having abortions, because they're going to be a minority. And so it's different.
Tune in next week as the conversation gets even more exciting when we talk about this ruling.
We've not been hoodwinked. They've told us from the very beginning of enslavement, of bringing the Africans to the shores of America. They let us know where our place was.